pull up a chair, closer than you'd like. Some stories don't bother easing you in. They don't whisper morals or leave you warmer or wiser. Some stories open like a wound you thought had healed, and the moment you look inside, you realize the infection has been festering for years. This is one of those tales, the kind that drags you past the velvet curtain of the R Lounge and straight into the quiet place where human masks finally slip. Our first descent begins with good intentions, the kind that rot quickest and ends in a place no friendship should ever travel. First story. Best friend didn't want me in his wedding party, so I canceled the destination wedding I funded. I met William my freshman year of college, back when life still felt clean and unwritten. For 14 years, we moved through the world like two halves of the same shadow. He held me together when my father died. I steadied him after he crashed and burned in his first real interview. We'd survived grief, humiliations, breakups, everything but betrayal. When William introduced me to Barbara, I remember the loosened grip in his shoulders, as if he'd finally stepped out of the cycle of women who left him feeling small. A few weeks later, I met Jess. The four of us fused instantly. Game nights, weekend trips, double dates. It felt easy, almost too easy, like the calm before a storm you've forgotten to fear. I thought William and I were still locked in the same unspoken brotherhood. Then came the night he texted me to grab beers. Just us. No laughter from the girls to soften the edges. His voice trembled with excitement when he admitted he wanted to propose to Barbara. I felt something warm, almost proud, rise in my chest. We spent a weekend hunting for a ring that would speak for him, and I helped design an elaborate proposal for the 4th of July beach party I'd planned. Fireworks burst over the water just as he knelt, and Barbara cried into her hands. I paid for most of the event, $200 as my gift. William hugged me like a brother and whispered, "Couldn't have done any of this without you." A week later, they asked to meet. Their eyes glittered with the kind of excitement people get right before asking for something dangerous. They confessed they'd always dreamed of a wedding in Bora Bora. Sunset ceremony, glassy water, overwater bungalows glowing like lanterns. But they couldn't afford it. Their dream was fragile, and somehow I wanted to protect it. 2 days later, I invited them over and offered to fund the entire destination wedding as my gift. Barbara dissolved into tears. William wrapped me in another one of those grateful, heavy hugs. I transferred $45,000 into an account for their wedding, booked the venue with a $15,000 deposit, hired a planner for $5,000, and began shaping their paradise from scratch. Barbara texted me every day with ideas and thank yous. But William began shrinking into himself. Whenever I gently suggested something, he stiffened. At dinner with Jess and them, he barely spoke. When I recommended a photographer I trusted, he slapped the idea down so fast it felt rehearsed. "We already have someone." They didn't. Still, I booked flights for the wedding party, another $12,000. William reviewed the details with the flat stare of a man trying to swallow resentment. When I asked if something was wrong, he muttered about pre-wedding stress. Then Jess mentioned she overheard Barbara complaining that I was too involved, even though I was the one bankrolling every inch of their dream. At a Halloween party, William drank too much and tossed little barbed comments about me, trying to control everything. When I confronted him, he smirked it away, blaming nerves. But the fracture was already visible. Then came the dinner, the one that shifted the air and left a cold taste in my mouth. They invited me over, and from the moment I walked in, tension clung to the room like humidity before a storm. They kept exchanging glances, the kind couples share right before delivering bad news. Finally, William cleared his throat, avoiding my eyes. "We've decided on our wedding party," he said. I leaned back, waiting for the obvious. Best man, right? William inhaled, slow, almost guilty. "We've thought a lot about this," he said quietly, "and we've decided who we want standing with us on our special day." The silence didn't just stretch. It calcified between us until the shape of it became obvious. "Wait," I said slowly, the words scraping my throat. "I'm not in the wedding party, am I?" They traded another one of those loaded glances, the kind that carries quiet verdicts. Barbara spoke first, her smile tight. "We want our closest friends standing with us." For a second, I thought I'd misheard. My chest tightened. I thought I was your closest friend. William shifted in his seat, eyes sliding away. You are, he said, voice thin. We just don't want you to feel obligated to be in the wedding party because you're paying for everything. The explanation landed like cheap perfume over something rotten. 3 days later, I was mindlessly scrolling through social media when I saw it. A post about William's bachelor party. 5 guys tagged as groomsmen. 2 of them were guys he'd met 3 years ago in some fantasy football league. My name was nowhere. A slow, cold realization crawled up my spine. I opened my banking app and went through the transactions one by one. Flights, deposits, planner fees. I had already poured $39,000 into their dream, with more charges on the horizon. The numbers on the screen felt like a ledger of my own stupidity. 2 days after that, at a group dinner, I caught Barbara's voice drift over the clatter of plates. We didn't want him in the photos. He can be so awkward. Besides, he offered to pay. It's not like we asked him to. The words sliced right through the noise. My fork froze halfway to my mouth. The room blurred for a second, my pulse loud in my ears. It was like being punched without anyone lifting a hand. Quiet rage settled in where hurt had been. I sent a group text to William and Barbara asking to talk about the wedding. They came to my apartment, and I laid it out as calmly as I could. Their decision, the comments, the way it all looked stacked together. My voice stayed even, but my fingers wouldn't stop tightening around the edge of the table. They went straight to defense. Barbara rolled her eyes. You're blowing this out of proportion. William added flatly, the wedding isn't about you. The conversation climbed quickly into something sharp and ugly. Finally, Barbara snapped, just because you're paying doesn't mean you get to stand front and center at our wedding. The irony burned. I had never asked to be front and center. I just thought that after 14 years of friendship, I'd at least stand beside him when he said his vows. That's when William dropped the real poison. He admitted they'd talked it over and decided I would throw off the aesthetic of the wedding photos. I didn't fit their vision. Translation, I wasn't attractive enough for their curated happiness. They were happily spending my money while editing me out of their life like a bad filter. The next morning, the quiet rage hardened into something else. Personal justice, maybe. I called the wedding planner and the venue, asking in a measured voice about cancellation policies. Then I texted William. I've decided to withdraw my financial support for your wedding. I'll be canceling all arrangements I've made. You have 48 hours to make alternative plans before I proceed with cancellations. My phone lit up. Calls, texts, notifications piling on top of each other. I didn't answer. Let them sit with the silence this time. When the 48 hours ran out, I pulled the plug. Canceled the bookings, cut the ties. Some deposits were gone for good, but I managed to recover about $25,000. The remaining loss felt less like wasted money and more like the price of ending unfinished business. William showed up at my door the next day, eyes wide, voice cracking as he begged me to reconsider. I watched him talk, watched his hands twist, and saw not a betrayed groom, but a man panicking over the collapse of his free ride. Jess has been solid through all of it. She told me with that measured calm of hers that real friends don't treat you like an ATM with feelings optional. According to her, I just stopped funding my own humiliation. Still, I keep replaying it all. Was I brutal? Petty? Did I let my quiet rage steer too far into punishment? Or did I simply refuse to keep paying for people who decided I wasn't good enough to stand in their photos? So, Reddit, am I the a-hole for canceling the destination wedding I was funding after my best friend decided he didn't want me in his wedding party? The morning after my post detonated across the internet, my phone turned into a live wire. Notifications swarmed the screen, pings, buzzes, vibrating bursts, each one tugging me deeper into the fallout. Friends who knew both William and me had seen the story and immediately recognized the players behind the thin disguise. I hadn't expected recognition. I hadn't expected exposure, but the messages that followed, those carved deeper than anything I'd braced for. At least 7 friends reached out, each with some variation of the same stunned revelation. They had no idea I was paying for the wedding. Instead, William and Barbara had been parading around some fantasy about winning a luxury resort ceremony through an exclusive travel sweepstakes, a shimmering lie polished for admiration. They had constructed a fiction in which they were lucky victors, not people siphoning off a friend's devotion and savings. And beneath that fiction, something uglier festered. One friend sent screenshots from a private group chat William and Barbara were in. The air seemed to thicken as I read. In message after message, they discussed managing me. Their words, to keep the money flowing while keeping me far from the parts of the wedding that actually mattered. Barbara joked that I was so desperate to feel relevant, I'd pay $45,000 just to orbit their big day. William replied with a line of laughing emojis, bright and mocking. Quiet rage rose in me like a tide, finally given permission to reach the shore. The blows kept landing. I learned they'd planned a second, more intimate reception at the resort, one I wasn't invited to, despite paying for every room and every flight. They scheduled it for the day after the ceremony, assuming I'd already be in the air, heading home like a discarded prop. 6 days after my original post, William finally reached out, as if timing itself were a negotiation tactic. His message was dressed like an olive branch but carried the same old entitlement beneath the varnish. He said they had reconsidered and would allow me to be a groomsman, not best man, if I reinstated the funding. He framed it as a favor. I declined with no explanation. Some boundaries don't require footnotes. The next day, word circled back to me that William and Barbara were telling their families a new story. One where I had promised them the money without conditions and was now trying to seize control of their special day. That little narrative twist painted me as a wedding tyrant, some meddling figure trying to hijack a celebration I was never meant to be part of. Then William's mother called, a woman I'd only met a few times, her voice trembling at the edges. She begged me to reconsider, insisting William and Barbara couldn't afford any wedding now, and the families couldn't help much. When I told her the full truth, the aesthetic comment, the group chat, the ATM jokes, she went silent for a long, brittle moment. Then she apologized quietly and hung up. The following day, a group text from William arrived with the sterile tone of a business announcement. They were postponing the wedding indefinitely due to unexpected financial complications. No apology, no acknowledgement, not even a flicker of remorse. Just the bureaucratic end to a dream built on someone else's generosity. The irony is so sharp it almost feels scripted. If they had simply included me in the wedding party from the beginning, even as the last groomsman on the list, I would have funded the entire celebration without a whisper of resentment. My loyalty was never for sale, it was already given. But betrayal carries interest. Last I heard, they're planning a backyard ceremony at his parents' house. I won't be there. There are places I refuse to haunt. Reaction. What you gave William and Barbara wasn't a gift. It was an act of faith. And they repaid that faith with secrecy, contempt, and a level of entitlement that borders on rot. They didn't just exclude you, they reshaped the story so you were a faceless benefactor, a convenient resource. They used you the way people use vending machines. Press a button, receive a benefit, never ask how the mechanism feels. Pulling your financial support wasn't revenge. It was the first moment you chose personal justice over self-erasure. You didn't ruin their wedding. Their own greed did. What would you have done? Up next, some people start their mornings with a shower, some with meditation. Some watch the slow implosion of their relationship from across the street. Second story. My fiancée threatened to end our relationship if I told her best friend's husband that his wife is cheating. I'm 27, my fiancée, 28. 12 years together, 3 of them engaged. I had always imagined our future as something steady, anchored, protected. We had our storms, sure, but I believed we weathered them the way long-term couples do, with endurance, loyalty, and an unspoken promise not to betray each other's compass. And then yesterday happened, and suddenly I'm not sure what we are. I'd stopped by a bakery on my way to work, thinking only about coffee and a warm sandwich. Across the street, I noticed Karen, my fiancé's closest friend, talking to a man I didn't recognize. Nothing unusual. I turned to pay, felt the heat of the ovens, the scent of bread. When I looked back, they were kissing. Not a momentary lapse, not a friendly peck. The kind of kiss that carries history, urgency, unfinished business. Instinct took over. I lifted my phone and snapped a photo. It felt wrong, intrusive even, but wrong in the way pulling someone from a burning house is wrong. You still do it. When I got home, I told my fiancée, showed her the photo. The reaction I expected, shock, anger, disbelief, never arrived. Instead, her voice flattened. Delete it and stay out of it. Her posture was rigid, her fingers tightening around the phone for a second before she handed it back. I told her I couldn't ignore it. If I were the husband, I'd want someone to tell me, even if the truth came like a blade. Her expression sharpened. If he finds out from you, she said quietly, we're done. The sentence dropped between us like an ultimatum carved from ice. Later, she apologized, half-heartedly, eyes averted, saying she didn't mean the breakup part, but still insisted I keep quiet. She repeated that it would destroy her friendship with Karen. I couldn't shake the unease crawling under my skin. The sense that she wasn't just protecting a friend, she was protecting the lie. Something inside me cracked. I told her I would tell the husband, and if she walked away because of that, then so be it. The words came harsher than I intended, fueled by a quiet, simmering fury I hadn't even realized was there. I didn't mean the fine with that part, but the truth is, I said it because her threat revealed something about us. Something jagged. It's 8 a.m. now. I haven't slept. I've replayed the conversation 100 times, hearing the tremor in her voice when she doubled down on the ultimatum. The more I turn it over, the more I wonder what moral ground my fiancé actually stands on. She isn't just ignoring betrayal, she's defending it, shielding it, and punishing me for wanting honesty. How do you make a life with someone who treats infidelity like an inconvenience? Edit. To be clear, the husband will learn the truth. Whether I tell him directly, do it anonymously, or convince Karen to confess, this secret is already unraveling. And yes, I know it's none of my business. But that's a convenient excuse people use when guilt becomes heavy. The husband and I may not be brothers, but we are friends. That alone makes it my concern. What my fiancé said, the threat, the dismissal, opened a wound I didn't expect. Her moral compass is spinning, and unless it steadies, our marriage won't survive the silence. I have the photo saved. Karen's face is unmistakable. There's no denying what she was doing. Before anything else, I plan to speak with her, give her the chance to admit the truth before it crashes into her husband like a tidal wave. One thing is certain, there will be no more double dates. That illusion has burned down. Community reaction. If my boyfriend came home and told me he saw my friend cheating, I wouldn't say, ignore it. I'd be unpacking every detail with him, deciding what to do next. Her reaction is strange. Too calm, too protective of the wrong person. She knew, or she suspected. The real question is whether she values her loyalty to a cheating friend over her loyalty to you, or whether she's hiding something of her own. And, not to pry, but why have you been engaged for 3 years? Is the wedding even in sight? The OP replied that yes. His fiancé's reaction had been strange, almost unnervingly so. He planned to talk to her again, to peel back whatever she was hiding behind the brutal calm. Someone asked why the engagement had stretched for so long. He explained gently that they had intended to marry 2 years earlier, but travel restrictions locked both families abroad. Their countries landed on the red list, so the wedding plans froze, suspended in the uncertain air of the pandemic. 2 months passed before he finally made the call. At first, he considered staying anonymous, dropping the truth like a stone into dark water. But in the end, he decided to face it directly. He phoned Karen's husband and told him everything. The world shifted. The man filed for divorce almost immediately. Karen left soon after. When OP last spoke with him, the husband said she wouldn't be contesting the house or their shared assets. His lawyer was confident she wouldn't win even if she tried, thanks to an infidelity clause tucked into their prenup, an old safeguard whose teeth had suddenly become very real. Weeks passed. The husband's voice grew steadier, the rawness smoothing slightly, the way wounds do once the bleeding stops. As for OP's fiancée, she was furious. She claimed he'd destroyed her friend's home, as if Karen hadn't already detonated it herself. 2 days ago, after one argument too many, OP ended their relationship. Her fury had shifted into something accusatory, almost rehearsed. They're now discussing who will move out. It will likely be her. He wished her well in a tone too calm to be anything but final. Good for you, one commenter wrote. You did the right thing. Must have been brutal telling him. And telling your fiancé. OP answered, it was. You could hear it in his voice, the way he was holding himself together by threads. He deserves better than the quiet betrayal he lived in. Another commenter said the obvious. She had been trying to shield her cheating friend at all costs, even if it meant sacrificing a decade-long relationship. Someone who protects infidelity so fiercely is capable of excusing it in their own life. A flashing, undeniable red flag. OP replied, at least this relationship taught me what not to accept in the future. That has to count for something. Another person chimed in, take your ring and run. You dodged the bullet, then tell the betrayed. OP said she'd left the ring at her parents' home, and yes, he intended to get it back. It wasn't hers anymore. Someone else asked, where do you live that infidelity affects property division? He explained, Europe. But the husband meant the prenup clause. I'm no lawyer, but that's what I gathered. More voices added their judgment. She threatened to break up with you because you wanted to tell a husband the truth? That's insane. Anyone who defends cheating that aggressively can justify it for themselves. I can't imagine letting a cheating friend blow up my own relationship. They deserve each other. And then the final quiet consensus. It wasn't the cheating itself that ended the relationship. It was her reaction, her willingness to scorch a 12-year bond to protect someone else's lie, her refusal to sit with truth, her hostility toward honesty, her moral compass spinning like a broken vein. OP's fiancé's response was the real wound here, the one revealing deeper fault lines. Most partners would be shocked, unsettled, ready to confront the mess together. Instead, she swept it aside, demanded silence, even threatened the very relationship she claimed to value. OP didn't break a marriage. Karen did. All he did was turn on the light. That his fiancée cared more about shielding betrayal than about maintaining trust speaks volumes. It invites necessary questions about her boundaries, her loyalties, her ability to choose honesty over convenience. Telling the husband was the right thing, even though it was painful. Ending the engagement was the right thing, not because of Karen's infidelity, but because of the fiancé's defense of it. What would you have done? And thank you for spending time with us in the R Lounge. Be sure to like, subscribe, and tap the notification bell so you never miss the next descent into the human condition. Until next time, and please put your chair back where you found it.